right. What's going on, folks? Killed my jam there. Still working on a couple of scenes for a template that I'm working on for my Octatrack. Today I wanted to talk about this setup. I wanted to talk about setups in general and like what goes into a good setup. This is something I've been discussing with people not only on the Discord, on Patreon, in forums, but during a lot of one-on-ones, which is something that I do a lot of throughout my week. And I've been getting several bookings with people, especially this last week, and one happened today where people wanted to talk about setups for shows. What is the right setup for performing? What should I pick? What kind of gear should I use? And should I use a Digitakt? Should I use Digitone? Should I use an Octatrack? Should I use an M8, for instance? And I want to talk about why I like this particular setup, but not just this exact perfect setup, which I do think it is a perfect setup, but what goes into a good setup, and then also do some music production. I would like to do make some techno today. That sounds fun to me. Techno to me, like making techno, especially on the Electron boxes, which is where I'll be doing it. The M8's on the table. I'm not going to be making music on the M8 today. But something about making that on these boxes is so fun, and I wanted to discuss this, and it actually plays right into this conversation about your setup. So let me jump over to the equipment really quick so we can see this. Okay. Digitakt, Digitone, Octatrack MK2, M8 tracker. When I go and perform, this is what I bring. I don't bring anything else. Folks often ask, this was a discussion today about like, what's the end of chain for you? And for me, there is no end of, my end of chain is my Octatrack and nothing else. So there's a reason for that, and that has to do with dynamics. And if you're not familiar with that concept, essentially it's what I'm referring to is that all of your songs have different volumes at different times. Different frequencies are accentuated at different moments in your music. And so I prefer to just not have any end of chain stuff, limiting compressors, that kind of thing. The Digitakt, Digitone, and the Octatrack can all do that on a per pattern basis. Well, the Octatrack can kind of do it on a per pattern basis. You can lock those values in on a pattern basis. But the Digitakt and Digitone can absolutely do it on a per pattern basis, despite me not using the compressors and stuff for that. The M8, on the other hand, can do it on a per song basis, and it does it extremely well. So you don't have to worry about it. It even has OTT. The M8 is actually overkill when it comes to it. It's got great end of chain built into it. It's fantastic. But this is what I take to my shows, and the way I have it set up and routed is not that unique anymore, I would say, or maybe it never was, but it's definitely a popular way to set things up. I think having an Octatrack and sending all of your gear into an Octatrack is a pretty popular thing to do. Not just by me, but I mean, just in general. I think the hardware electronic music community loves having Octatracks on the table. They're fantastic. They're the DarkSouls of electronic music. They're hard to learn. Hard to master, but once you get the hang of it, you're just like, wow, it does everything, and it does it well, and it's fun, and it's interesting, and it feels like I'm learning a real instrument, not just learning a piece of gear, right? It feels like you're learning how to play guitar almost when you start mastering the Octatrack. You're like, wow, I'm doing things, I'm moving the fader around, and I can hear the changes, and that's unique to the Octatrack, although it's becoming less unique to the Octatrack as more instruments that have an interface that lets you play with it more arrive in the hardware electronic music scene. And of course, we have keyboards and pianos. Let's not exclude them, but I mean groove boxes that actually have that kind of input. We're seeing that with the Polyend drum. We're seeing that with the TR-1000. So as far as like newer stuff goes, we're starting to get like more faders and stuff like that being added into hardware electronic music. Even the M8 allows you to manipulate things just by touching its screen. It has a touch screen, and you can apply values or macros to the touch screen and do lots of different things. Really cool. I don't really use that function very much, but it is there, and it's capable of doing that. So the way I like to have things set up for my particular workflow for live electronic music, for shows, and for production, whatever it is, sometimes I'm doing commercial work every once in a while. I get booked for something like that, is I like to use my Digitakt as my drum machine. I like to use my Digitone as my synth. I mean, it's obviously a synth, but I like to use it as my synth voices. So chords, bass lines often, and textures. And some overlap will happen on both machines. My Octatrack is always for performance effects and transitioning between songs. There's lots of cool stuff that can happen on the Octatrack, and I have all these different versions of templates and stuff that you can find on Patreon if you're interested in that turn your Octatrack into all sorts of different workflows. In this particular one I'm doing right now, it is a drum melody bus split. It's this template I've been working on forever, and it's been super slow just because I've already done so much in that space that I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it. I'm working on it slowly because it's for me. I'm building this template for my live shows, and so I'm taking my sweet time. It's hard for me to find something where I'm like, I need this in the show. I like kind of like simple effects sometimes, and that's what this template kind of is. It's more of a techno performance template. It's meant to treat your drums and your melodies separately, like a lot of these templates I do with Octatrack and how I like to treat the Octatrack. Even if this wasn't an Octatrack, that's how I would treat my music. Now, the M8 tracker is really unique in this setup in the way I have to use my mate with my Octatrack with these pieces of equipment is kind of a thing. Because the M8's sending clock and my Digitakt is sending clock, those clocks will multiply. The way that I like to do things, let me explain why I do this. Because I think this is important. For people that are using an Octatrack as like an end-of-chain effects processor, whether you're using stuff that I've done with performance templates or whether you're doing it yourself and you're building your own thing, you're just thinking the Octatrack's got filters and stuff. It's great to use for this kind of thing. The way I like to approach things, and this is like antithetical to what I've said in the past, is that I like to have my Octatrack receive clock. And the reason I like to do that is to keep my tempo in the machine that is doing the drums. My Digitakt is doing the drums, and to me, your drummer is kind of keeping the tempo, right? That's pretty like standard rock and roll perspective or whatever, you know, just typical band type music perspective. And that's where my head comes from usually. So I keep my clock in my Digitakt. But another reason for that is that if I wanted to say like do a live transition to another song, I like the idea of recording and staying on the same pattern on my Octatrack at all times. So if I'm doing live transitions with a live 4-bar loop, I prefer to have my looper be like this exclusive unit. I don't want my looper to be also doing my music for me. Like there's a lot of performance templates and stuff that you can build on your Octatrack to kind of like have it do both, where it's playing music and also doing these live transitions. But for me, I prefer to just have it receive clock. I sit on the same pattern and all I do is jump around from my parts. So I do this with my M8, I do this with my Digitakt, I do it with my Digitone, and this has just been my workflow. But basically what it saves you from doing is like if I have a track playing, I hit the yes button and it arms it to record on the next 4-bar loop. This is super basic. And it's actually, for me, in this particular workflow, it's recording a 4-bar loop on both track 4 and track 8. And when I transition to scene 16, it transitions to muting both input buses and playing a loop of 4 and a loop on 8, a loop of Digitakt, a loop of Digitone, which I just transitioned over to. Right? But I could go in here and now I could start like... right? Reverse. And go back out of that. So I was just in a live loop. I can jump back over to it if I want. I'm back in my live loop. I had to wait a second for it to sequencer to hit the play button to get excited, play with the rate. That's something you need to think about. But if I'm in a live loop, I can like queue up a bunch of changes here. And then I can drop into those changes. It's so playable, it's really fun, it's so easy, right? I just hit the yes button, waited 4 bars, quickly transitioned, made some changes, used a scene to transition out of the 4-bar loop. I used one of these pre-built automated scenes that I have in this particular template. I have lots of this stuff in other templates, so enough advertisement about that. I do think this is a great workflow, not just my work, your work. You do it yourself. You don't need to do what I do. But I mean, I think that this does that job really well, and this is something that would require a DJ mixer and some macro scenes. You could do this with an Oid tight drop. I'm not going to deny that fact. You can do it without an Octatrack. You could do it with other stuff. The Oxa E16 can do this stuff too. I think it's easier on an Octatrack, and I've also already done it for you, so that's something you can do on Octatrack with some of my help or with hitting up the Patreon, but it's a great use of the year Octatrack. I think it's the best use of your Octatrack in 2026. There's no doubt, because I think it's now getting a little old in terms of like, we got new stuff that's coming out with like the sample rate, and the new polyend drum is like super high, right? And the tone verk is also super high sample rate, bit rate. Like it can play pretty much any sample that you put into it. It was crazy. It sounds insane, right? Tone verk sounds crazy. Now I want to talk about this, what I'm doing with my mate. So when I perform at shows, there are two different approaches to music production, I think. Like there's the music production approach on something like a tracker, and there's the music production approach on something like Electron. And it's a conversation I'm having all the time with people, which I love. I love this conversation, honestly, because it sparks some really cool debate. And there's something about the tracker perspective, right? There's something about the Electron perspective. And the Electron perspective is probably like the typical perspective that most gear makers are going towards. I would say that most people who are making tunes are making things with this XOX style sequencer, where they have this look at a single track at a time perspective, right? And you're kind of like, you're stuck looking at that track and you're thinking about that track as you're producing. Like if you're working on a hi-hat track, you're looking at track 6, you're looking at the steps on your hi-hat track, and you're in here dialing in that track. And while to say that that is similar to what you're doing when you're in that moment of writing on like something like a tracker, where you dive into a phrase and you go inside a chain and you're manipulating that, the perspective on here is to see your entire song in its entirety. In fact, let's just jump over and look really quick, because I think that this is important. Maybe I have to turn this on again. Hold on a sec. Yeah, so let's jump over and take a look. So if we're looking at something like the Mate, for instance, now when you're on something like the Mate, your perspective of your music is, this is an entire song. I can see all this song in here, and if I go inside of a phrase, I can see all the different patterns or all the different pages of that phrase, and I can see where there's duplicates. Like I can see that on the 5th part of this chain, or bar 5 and bar 1, they have identical phrases in there. And that's interesting and important once you recognize what you're doing in that phrase, and you go, oh, I know what I'm doing. I know 65 sounds like this. I'm going to use 65 again on this other piece. You don't have that perspective on Electron. You can't actually see the number. You can see that you have pages because they added page loop, but it's still not the same perspective. And then when you're inside of these chains, I can see all the note values. I can see the performance effects, or the parameter locks. There happens to be none in this particular phrase, but I can see the parameter locks that I would have on those notes. On the Electron workflow, it is not this. On the Electron workflow, you go in here and you want to see what's going on. You got to hold down a step. You'll know that you've done some parameter locking because they blink, but that's wow. Whole lot of data I'm getting from that perspective, right? I'm seeing blinking lights. That's not very much information. That doesn't tell me the note. That doesn't tell me what's being affected at all. So I can't really gather any information. I have to hold down the track and then look and see, and it goes, oh, well, your amp has, your modifier has something, your amplitude has something, and I have to click on that window and take a look. Now, I'm not complaining about this. I'm just saying that the perspective from a tracker and the perspective from an XOX style Electron sequencer is unique to each other. They are not similar in this regard. And it leads to writing a different style of music, and then it leads to a different approach. Yeah, I guess it leads to writing a different style of music. I don't need to like elaborate on that further. It really does. And this has to do with the M8 giving you more of an arrangement perspective, something more akin to what you would see in your DAW. And so you're looking at it from more of an arranger brain, where you're thinking, you know, in bars, going into bridges, going into verses, going into choruses. And this happens in techno too. It's just the structure is different. But in the Electron, like techno and house thing, like maybe you'll use the arranger. Probably not. You're probably having fun playing with mutes and queuing up your own patterns, so you're less likely to use the arranger. And I think you're more feeling the song here, which I really enjoy, and honestly is my preferred method for live, is to feel out a track, and that's where I play the most on the Electron stuff. Whereas over here, you're much more arranging an entire song. And that plays into two different like parts of your brain and how you're thinking about music and the kind of music that you end up writing. So I think a lot less like techno and house and stuff like that ends up on a tracker than it does here, because this is just much more intuitive for that style of music, and it's much more playable. These machines are much more playable. Now, and I hope that makes sense. And I think I elaborated on that pretty well. And I think other people would probably, who own these pieces of equipment or are using Renoise or Pico Tracker or whatever it is, other people that are using tracker perspectives or just writing in Ableton. Because I guess that's what I was saying is the closest to this tracker experience is seeing your arrangement in whole session view. A push might be a better comparison than maybe Ableton, right? Because it's actually a piece of hardware. But I think when you're seeing things in that perspective, you tend to make these different musical calls about what you're doing with your music. You tend to feel more, at least this is my perspective, right? This is all in my opinion. I think you tend to feel more inclined to use bridges, like stuff leading into these like leading bars, right? As opposed to performing those leading bars, as opposed to performing a bridge, as opposed to performing an intro. You tend to actually write an intro into your music in something like that provides you with an arrangement view. That's just, it's just easy because it's easy to think in that perspective. Whereas here you don't think in that perspective. So what I think we do here, and this is my personal workflow, is that it's like, where are you starting your song is kind of arbitrary. Like, are you like, I'm writing the chorus? But I think the answer is you don't know. I don't think you know if you're writing the chorus on Electron as much. When you're on like in a session view or a clip launcher view, or I guess that's session view, or you're looking at a tracker's arrangement, I think you're acutely aware of where in your song you're writing, except for say the very beginning of your song. But you're very aware of where you are. You're aware that this is a few bars into a song, we're at about a minute of music. Over here, you don't know. You may have 5 minutes of music, you may have one. It could be how you perform it. Maybe you're going to spend time just tweaking hi-hats the whole time you're performing because you're doing these little tiny clicks and pops. You know what I mean? Like you can have this, it's a whole nother perspective on what you're doing with your music when you're working on the Electron workflow. And it almost sounds like what I'm describing is an advertisement to not use this workflow, but it's actually kind of the opposite. I think when it comes to live performance, I think that this really shines. I think the Electron workflow really sound like my kid. The Electron workflow really shines, and because it's super fun to perform on. What I did with my Octatrack and my M8, and I do this with any other piece of equipment that has this like arrangement workflow, I build these performance effects in here that kind of like record the audio live, and then they jumble the audio around and create rhythmic modulations to the music. Not like a gator, like just a bunch of gating stutters or something. Like literally sampling the audio live and then like time stretching it and moving it around. I had this template called the Hyper Effects template. If you've never heard of it, yeah, it's not like the most mainstream thing in the world, but it is really fun. And I actually have these magnetic overlays for your Octatrack. So, but it like records in your audio and it jumbles it around. And I used that, and I created it for my M8 so that I had something more to do when I was playing live with my mate. And if it was my Polyend tracker, I would still be using the same idea. There's still just less to do in the tracker workflow because the instruments are more static to the track. Whereas over here, we have all these potentiometers to turn and all these values to see in the screens, and all the real estate has been used on that. And that's where these machines really shine. So I wanted to make sure I covered this because it's interesting. And if you've seen me perform live, you've maybe seen me do this at a show, and it's always stressful, but I do it anyway. Is that when the way I have my audio routed when I do something like with my mate, the Digitakt and the Digitone Octatrack, is that I take my mate and I have an TRS-X by Retro Kits, and these things are brilliant, really worth the investment. I have 4 of them in my studio. I just always have them around. and I use them constantly because everything's starting to use 3.5 millimeter MIDI, and my mate uses 3.5 millimeter MIDI, and they have A and B inputs on them. So the TRS MIDI standard, I think, is A. Most people are using A, but the forbidden companies that use B do use it. Happens. There's quite a few companies that I really like that use TRS-B, and yeah, well, I'm just glad that this exists. Otherwise, I would be a lot more frustrated than I am. But so I take this little adapter, which plugs into my Digitakt, and what I do is I actually have my Digitakt ready to receive clock. And so like the Digitakt's not receiving clock, and it's actually sending clock. Its job is to send clock, but I have it ready to receive clock. And so when it does, it gets taken over by the incoming clock. And so what I'll do is I will plug this into my Digitakt, and it will take over the clock for all the gear. Alternatively, I can unplug the MIDI in from my Octatrack and plug this in. So what I'll do during a live show is I'll find an effect that's like a beat repeat, like this one right here, and I'll just let it kind of repeat, and I'll just go as fast as I can. And in that process of it doing that beat repeat, even if I have the MIDI clock and all that stop going to the Octatrack, as long as it just stops going to the Octatrack, those beat repeats are going to keep going. Even if I stop the Octatrack, it keeps going, which is great because this gives me this like safety net. While the music is looping over and over, I can switch over to my mate sending clock, pop it in there, and then when I come out of here, bam, the mate is making music, right? I'm into the intro of my song, clock is being sent to my Octatrack, and it just works. You know, it works as a transition. It's like a makeshift kind of DIY hardware transition. It just does, it does the trick. And so from there, these suddenly become excluded, but I actually have my M8's audio being run into either my Digitakt's inputs or my Digitone II's input. Now, the name of like this, the thumbnail title on the stream was like, I can, you know, any genre, whatever, I can do all kinds of music with this setup. That would be true with a lot of gear. That's like, and I wasn't trying to be clickbaity with that. I mean it because it's true. But there's a lot of other equipment that could come in here and do that too. But I wanted to give a perspective on why there's something about having this arrangement perspective and this electron perspective in my particular workflow. And the reason why it's unique and cool to mix and mash these two different things together is that I can think in both brains. And I don't know where you come from musically, what perspective that you come from musically is, for me, I come from performing or from playing rock music and singer-songwriter stuff. I want to say like I come from playing in bands growing, but I did a long time ago. But like I didn't play in my band since I was 21 or 22. It was the last time I played in that band, and we took it really seriously. I just want to say that because I was like, well, am I lying when I say that? But it was all I did. It was all my life. Music has always been my life. Personally, it's always been my goal was to play music for a living, and that's all I cared about. And pretty much every movement I've made in my life has been towards that goal. And that was the perspective I came from was rock and roll. So I always played guitar and sang and wrote songs. And so I have this like arrangement brain. I've been doing electronic music for a long time now, and so I have this brain has been polished somewhat. I think I make decent music from time to time. And I think I like what I write on my mate as well. And I think it's two different styles of music entirely. I think that when I make music on my M8 tracker, I am writing I'm writing a song, honestly, and it's completely different. When I say like I'm playing music on my Electron boxes, I can't really say I'm playing songs. Sometimes I can. Sometimes they are really songs and I'm like just practicing getting the patterns. But a lot of times I'm performing setups. I'm performing these these patterns that I've produced that could be interpreted as a song. But they're tracks. They are bangers, hopefully, when I'm performing live. But they're different every single time I play because they don't have like rules, so to speak. I do try and inject some rules into my setup in my Electron boxes by using pattern mutes. And if you're not familiar with pattern mutes, they're the purple mutes. They're remembered into your pattern. And if you save your pattern, if you go in and save your pattern state, and you can reload your pattern state with the mutes on it. That way you can practice your song over and over and over again and just keep reloading your pattern state. It's also something you can do during a live performance if you accidentally do a function yes, function no, but you do function yes twice, which will save the state twice. And so if you accidentally save the state when it was meant to be something, it's more of an effect. And like, you definitely don't want that to be your music because maybe you did a track, hold track and turn it all. Your reloading to the pattern state will fix that for you without stopping your clock and your transport. So really important little tip with the Electron boxes and something you should 100% leverage. There's actually similar stuff in your mate. I know you can't, I'm hiding the mate. There's similar stuff in your mate. It actually has a recall from a pattern state that you can do. You have to be in your mixer to see it for it to work. I actually forget the key combo. If anybody knows the key combo, please put it in the chat because I keep forgetting it. And I keep wanting to do it. So please put it in there. Those of you who have mates, whatever the key combo is to save the pattern state. Maybe it's option something. But you can recall those patterns and it will kind of save your butt. So overall, what I'm getting at between having these two different workflows is that I have this songwriter electronic music perspective, which is half of my set when I perform live, and I have this improvisational perspective or part of my set, and that's on the Electron boxes. And when I perform, I'm always using an Electron box because my Octatrack, I have two of these guys, one of them even has a battery in it, is always in my sets. Like an Octatrack is always with me everywhere I go. The Octatrack is my favorite like effects processor. It's just my favorite tool. I think of it as like what you would think of like a VCA is or a mixer. In your Eurorack setup, you just kind of have to have it. Like it's just gonna do stuff you need to get done to play your music. That's what the Octatrack does for me. It sums audio, it does effects processing, it helps do transitions, and it can also be used as your entire show. You don't actually need anything but an Octatrack to perform. So that's why it's always with me. But I also like to have this like arranger brain music here and pair it with my Octatrack so I can get more leverage, more effects than what you get from your mate. I know like if you're on the Dirty Wave Patreon, then you've probably seen posts about he's working on his own mixer and stuff for it that will work really well with the mate. And that'd be cool. So looking forward to that as well. There's been a lot of performance mixers coming out this year, and to me, I don't get why everyone is using that name. They're just mixers with maybe a filter or a compressor. I don't know why everyone wants to leverage that title. To me, a performance mixer has a bunch of effects. So sometimes people come out with that. I guess the Teenage Engineering one to me is a performance mixer because that's what you use it for, strictly to perform and do stuff with it, not just to sum and level audio and maybe a filter. But that's why I think this setup works really well. There are some other pieces of equipment, like just so that we're not just talking about Electron, and then I'm maybe going to make some music. I said I was going to make like some techno on here, but I feel like talking is actually occupying a lot of what's going on in my brain right now. So just like having this conversation aloud is maybe more valuable to me than the gear, than making music today, because I have plenty of music in here. But there's a lot of other pieces of equipment that I think can do kind of both. I think someone had mentioned the TR-1000. The TR-1000 is another piece of equipment that I think falls in line with the Electron workflow, and it can do all the things. It has an arranger too, so like you can do songs on your TR-1000. And it even like it shows you the bars. It doesn't, and it shows you values when you doesn't show. It's the same perspective as the Electron. Let's put it that way. The TR-1000 and Electron are pretty similar. I'd say this is actually a lot easier. I really like the TR-1000. I think it sounds awesome, and it's got the faders and stuff. It's really fun. It's got some really cool sounds, and that's an individual outs. Like that's its superpowers. It's got individual outs. It's got all that stuff. But I would say it's basically like using an Electron box, but a whole lot harder because Roland. That's the best answer I can give you. Just because Roland's still not figured out the how to make something really easy and comfortable to use. I think they maybe did a better job with that with the TR8S. Actually, the TR1000 is just a lot. It's a lot, but that is one of those boxes that can do an absolute ton, and it could be the centerpiece for a show. You'll still end up writing, I think, the style of music that you write on Electron. I think there's something really unique about pairing your live set with something like a tracker because of the tracker perspective. And I think when you dive into different like sequencer perspectives, say we have the Oxy one, which is similar to like a Deluge, which is similar to a Polyan Play, which is similar to a Relic, which is similar to a Scorp, Hapax, and similar to a Hermod, and all these other like grid-based workflows where you can see that you've put gates and note values down on that perspective, leads you to write a certain style of music. And I think it's such an interesting thing to me about like why we buy so many pieces of equipment kind of lands in this thing that happens based on our perspective and our interaction and how we communicate, our bodies physically communicating with our equipment. Same with the computer. This is not to exclude the computer. There's a reason why I don't use my computer as much for music production, and that's because my interaction with the computer to communicate with it is with a mouse and with my mouse. And to me, it just gets uncomfortable, like physically uncomfortable. And so I'm less interested. I'm more interested in this. It's just clickety clackety, and like I like that. But there's something really interesting about like, say like the push 3, for instance. The push 3 would be something that could do everything here. Honestly, it kind of dwarfs the power of all of this. You could take this all off the table and just be like, push 3, MIDI controller, all of this stuff. The problem with that is the playing shows with it is that it doesn't do the pattern loading experience the same. It's a lot less forgiving when it comes to loading projects. But when it comes to having the perspective on your music on it, it has the interaction, has MPE, and it has the large screen, bigger than all of these screens, and higher resolution. In fact, it just looks really nice. Really fast screen refresh, like it's beautiful when you're seeing the EQ move and all that. Like it's chef's kiss. It's gorgeous. But the perspective on it, the session view and stuff, it to me makes me want to write. I want to write Electron style music on it, but the interface makes me want to do stuff that I do on the Mate, more arrangement style stuff. Very conflicting for me, but there's something about the perspective that causes that confliction that I end up using it a little bit less just because I don't know what to do in that moment. I'm so used to having to pick between one or the other. But I do love the idea of having both, right? So this is something for me to chew on and get past. I haven't gotten past it yet. And then we have, like, we were talking about those, like, the sequencers like Deluge and stuff like that. And there are more pieces of equipment that can write any style of music, but the perspective of something like the Deluge, whether or not you have a problem with the Deluge's sound quality or not, because it's something I've talked about. It sounds great. It's just, I would love to get a higher sample rate and a Deluge 2 would be like, I'd be all over that. That perspective, like the Deluge, like the Hapax and all that, with the buttons layout that gives you the view, and the push does it too, but it's not as fun to look at in the same way that it is on something like the Deluge with the smaller squares, is that you tend to write, I think, I'm saying you, like I know you, but I tend to write more chord progressions in that perspective than I do here. And I tend to write more chord progressions on my M8 than I do here for whatever reason. I don't know why that is. Maybe someone else can tell me why they think that is. I'm not sure. But I think in stuff like Deluge and devices that follow that, the grid-based programming, is that because you can see the notes and it's drawing that shape, it's very piano roll. And piano roll is the reason it's been around, and it's pretty much the exclusive way to program notes in your computer for the last 25 years is it works. It's good. It just does the trick. It does it, right? Do we have a better way of programming chords than the piano roll? like on your computer. Like no one else is even trying, it seems like, to do stuff any different than the piano roll. I don't know why that is, but that does seem to be the case. And so those pieces of equipment, I think because of that, when you interact with them, they give you that chord progression perspective, which I think tends to go into the arrangement perspective, puts it into the category of the M8 tracker. And that's where I was going with that. It like leads me down to arranger, and it's probably why I'm writing chord progressions more in my M8 is because of the arrangement brain. Chord progressions require a bit of arrangement brain, I think, to have good music. That's like a whole conversation unto itself, is like the writing chords and doing melody. And it's like this is a topic we've talked about a bunch here, and I have to treat live streams like no one's ever heard them before because they're live. But I think when you're writing like a lot of melodic stuff, you have to think about how often the melody is going to repeat, because after the first time it repeats, like after it's happened once, if it happens again, it's now it's now happened. I guess I don't know what else to say about it. It gets cooked real quick. A melodic progression, after it repeats a few times, we memorize it and then we go, okay, let's go, move it along. Let's go to the next part of the melodic progression. I don't want to listen to the same melodic progression over and over and over again. And that's why I think like in techno production, there's a whole very little of it, very little melody, but often the melody that is there is like this obtuse, detuned, broken thing. And it's really hard for my brain, I'm going to say, to parse the melody. And so therefore it can repeat for so long. It almost becomes percussive, I'd say. It's more like you're thinking of the melody as a beat, like a drum beat. When you're writing a chord progression, you're going to think of it as, you're waiting for the resolution, right? Or you're waiting for it to go, I guess, yeah. The resolution, I guess, is the right word for it. You're waiting for the resolution. You're waiting for this change. Like you start anticipating some stuff to have happen. I think in techno production, you're more like anticipating the drop. You're anticipating a break. You're anticipating, these energy levels. And that doesn't happen so much with chord progression stuff. That leads back to what I'm discussing about the M8 tracker, is that stuff like the M8 tracker lends itself to the chord progression stuff, it lends itself to the arrangement stuff. And that's why it's so good to have something like this in your set for me. And I'm like, I want to play all different kinds of genres because I am not just interested in techno. I'm not a techno producer. I think if I was going to be sucked into one genre, it'd probably be dub techno. That's like the one genre where I just don't get sick of it ever. I'm just like, this sounds good. I could listen to this all day. I really love that genre. And the M8 can do that too. And like it can do that. It does it just fine. In fact, I love the dub techno that I write on this type of device, on this arranger device, because dub techno is a chord progression genres. That's probably why I like it so much. It scratches both parts of my brain, the arrangement brain, so to speak, with the chords and stuff, and also the techno, take out the kick and build some anticipation type stuff. You don't do that when you're writing more like, I don't know, the other styles as much. You might not even have a track dedicated to your kick. I just think it's an interesting conversation. I think it's interesting for us to think about it and to wonder, what is there another approach for my gear? And there's a reason why I have a hard time picking new instruments for me to perform with. Like I want to use other people's stuff, other gear, like, but when I get familiar with it, I'm like, well, I already have what it does on the table. Like what it does is the same thing. It's XOX style. The Electron sequencer, what makes it so good is their UI implementation, because the sequencer isn't unique to Electron. There's a million sequencers that are XOX style with parameter locking now. I mean, they've pioneered it, I'd say. But like, there's a lot of sequencers that do that. It doesn't have to be Electron. To me, it's just about having that perspective from the instrument. I truly do believe that the sequencer is the instrument and everything else is just the kind of strings on your guitar, or the kind of amplifier for your guitar, or the kind of skin for your toms. right? Or the kind of piano you're playing, whether it's a Rhodes or you're playing an electric piano or you're playing a grand. Like, all those things have the instrument is the keys. Everything else is just how it sounds. That's what it comes to these sequencers. The instrument here is the tracker. Everything else around it is just making noise. And the instrument here is the electron sequencer. Everything else around is making noise. And so I have two styles of instruments here. We have tracker-based instrument. We have XOX-based instrument. There's another style, I think, and that's like a piano. It would be like actually playing the instrument live, which you can interject, and you can combine all of these things together, of course. I don't know if I have the talent to pull that off in a way that I think would sound good for everybody, but I do like to mix and mash these things together. So that's why I think that this is the ultimate setup, because I'm covering, I think, the wide range that they offer. I think I'm taking advantage of the arrangement perspective that you get from something like a tracker, or you get from something like a deluge or Hapax. All of those things, I think they kind of fall in the same category. I guess we could put the Hapax deluge perspective in its own little niche, but I'd say it's very similar to what you get from a tracker, because it's just going to engage you in the same way that a session view does, that an arrangement view does. And over here we have a much more improvisational perspective. And there's even more. Like, we can continue this discussion. We can go even further. So like, what else can you do with these things? Now, people like to pair stuff like these multi-timbral instruments like M8s, Digitakts, Digitones, with stuff like an Oxy sequencer or Hapax, I was saying, or even a Deluge. This is actually kind of cool. This one time, it actually worked out well, and I did record it as a video like 9 years ago. It was a long time ago. I think it's on the channel though. It's super old. Don't watch it. I took my Digitakt and I wrote all the music on my Deluge, which was doing its own thing, doing some stuff. It was sequencing my modular, and my Digitakt was being sequenced by my Deluge. And I had these like pre-programmed sequences on the Digitakt, but every single one of the steps was a fill condition. So my Digitakt was making all the drum sounds, but when I held the fill button, it did drum fills. But my Deluge was programming the Digitakt. So I had like a lot of programming going on there. We had modular to deal with, the Deluge, and then Digitakt. It was probably a little bit much for my brain at the time, but I think it worked out. It's kind of a cool perspective. There's something you can do with like the torso sequencer and the Oxy sequencer doing the multi-timbral experience. And that's actually another kind of sequencer onto its own. I guess I probably should have brought that up. This, I think, covers it for the most part, but it's not quite the same. We don't have this generative sequencing that you get from that. So I guess maybe the title slightly misleading, because I am missing that little teeny bit. The Electron stuff doesn't do generative very well. It has some stuff that kind of, I don't know, pretends to be generative because we can give probability, but it's not taking a sequence from nothing and creating it. There is a way to do it, actually. We can talk about it really quick. There is a way. Let's look. Just to cover our bases, we'll go to a blank pattern. If I go over to my Digitone, let's do a little bit of music just to show off this idea. So, and you could do this with your Digitakt too. Maybe we'll chop this and make it a YouTube reel or some BS like that. But if I lock in notes in my sequencer, let's make it really short because I don't want to have to program too much. I'm going to make this sequence just 8 steps long. So if I was to lock in a bunch of notes, and how I like to do this, if I'm going to do something like this really quick, record stop to go into step record mode. It'll increment you along your sequencer as you enter notes. And so like we could just hit some random notes. Right, I got these notes. Let's make it sound like something else. We'll go to Swarmer, because why not? Now, if I go into my Euclidean sequencer, and this is the closest thing we get to this improvisational sequencer perspective, but this is something you can do if you want to bridge the gap between and really do cover every experience that you can have for a live show. You can do this, where you can put some notes in, go into your Euclidean sequencer and turn that sucker on. And Okay, our sequencer stopped. We have now left Electron sequencer. We've entered Euclidean. Euclidean is not Electron. Electron added another sequencer that's obviously pioneered by Euclid, the mathematician, but it has been used in all sorts of formats. Extremely popular in Eurorack, I'd say. Probably the most popular in Eurorack, but it's also very popular on the Oxy. The Oxy uses Euclidean a lot, and matricial, or whatever, however you say it, all sorts of weird sequencers. But you can use it here in Electron, and if you pre-program the note values, you can improv a bit like this. Let's give this a... make these effects sound a little better. And we can rotate the sequencers. Right? And I can kind of improv this. Even though these notes are too obvious, so they're like too weirdly melodic techno, which is not a genre that I'm super into lately. Right? Right? And I can improv. If I copy this and go to another track and paste it, and then also copy these note values, or we go like this, and paste it. Now I should have these on both tracks. I could potentially change the sound. Maybe we'll go like this and do something a little weirder. Two improv sequencers, which I can see at the same time while Euclidean is active. I just go into track to track by holding track and selecting the track. So I guess I can kind of approach things in like a pseudo improv perspective, similar to what you would get from having an external sequencer on the Electron sequencers on the Digitakt II, the Digitone II. My brain was going because it was thinking about like all the other Electron boxes that have implemented Euclidean. And I was like, oh wait, the Rhythm has it too, and so does Syntakt. Probably eventually coming to Toneverk, who knows? But probably, I imagine. I don't know why not. It's already here. So you can kind of get into that improv setup. So like technically, you really do have all your bases covered, but I still think it's not quite the same as what you get from having a fully external sequencer, kind of like what it's like having a fully external effects processor. I was talking with this performer who's writing some music, playing a show. I get booked sometimes by people right before they play a show. And they're like, I'm gonna use this box. You know, let's talk about MIDI and routing and what should we do and da da da. I'm just kind of helping troubleshoot. Just kind of like as an extra set of eyes, an extra pair of hands, so to speak, on the computer, going through manuals with them and just helping people get their stuff together. Which is cool. I actually really enjoy it. It's some of my favorite bookings are like people about to play a show. Hey, can you help me figure these things out? And we dive into manuals and chat. And I was having some conversations this last week with like 3 different people who all were playing shows, and they all were like, I want to talk to you about the show I'm going to play, and let's talk about this stuff. And we're talking about external effects processors, external loopers, and the Octatrack does such a good job of doing this because it has that 4-bar looper, which I showed you earlier, right? I build it into my like performance templates all the time. It's actually, I mean, it is kind of If you don't know the Octatrack well, it would be very confusing for me to explain it to you. But if you know it well, it's actually not too hard to do. You can program it in a few minutes if you're familiar with the Octatrack. You can build the idea into any of your shows if you want. And we were talking about external loopers, and I was mentioning my buddy Drew Knight, who goes under the name DN Crystal when he performs live. And I mentioned him because he uses an RC 202 or RC30, I can't remember what it is, RC202 or whatever RC it is, one of the boss loopers, and he'll record his set. He'll just tap tempo, the recording, into the looper, just listening to the beat, and then hit the record button, and then the volume will be down on the looper, and then on his Digitakt he uses with it, he'll do this with both hands, and then fade in the loop that he recorded from the Digitakt, and the Digitakt becomes silent. In that process, he's loading a new project on his Digitakt. Because when you load a new project on Digitakt, it's going to go to silence. The clock's going to stop. And so the looper's there to keep the set going, as you imagine, and transition him from song to song, because he writes all the songs in a single project. Now, this isn't unique to DN Crystal. This is really common for tons of artists. A lot of people use this perspective. There's fortunately stuff like the MA Tracker can load another pattern, another project seamlessly, and requires no waiting. You can queue it up, and at the end of the pattern, it will jump to the new project for you. It's badass. There's nothing like this thing. It's amazing. I hope he adds a polysynth, like a true poly to it. It would blow my mind. So that's what they would do, right? They would use the looper for that. Not easy, not something I would feel very comfortable doing. I'd really want to be able to hear what I recorded and make sure that they were lined up so I don't go click, 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 like you would do if you were off by even just the smallest amount. He happens to be a drummer, so he's probably super good at doing that versus me. And but anyway, that's their perspective. Keeping it on this external box. On the Octatrack, I just use MIDI clock, and what I'll do is when I record a loop, say yes, transition over, and if the pattern has a new tempo to it, I just change the tempo or on whatever's sending tempo. So not on my Octatrack. I would change the tempo here and just slowly adjust to the tempo I'm about to go to from the track that I was just on. And that does the trick as well. But not everybody has an Octatrack. Not everybody feels comfortable doing that. But it does it really well. So having something like that externally is really useful. And another reason why this covers all the bases. So the Octatrack is kind of like the super tool among all these things because it can do live resampling, which nothing else does at all. Like what else does it other than a push 3? But even transitioning between the recording on the push 3 to the Octatrack, I don't even know what the best practice for that would be because I've not done it, but I know it can because the push can do everything. But this does it, and it has a great implementation for it. It's very simple. You've seen me do it probably if you watch this channel a billion times because I do it all the time. But nothing else has that workflow, and that kind of like hammers it home for me. Like I got the summing coming into the Digitakt, I got audio, I got 2 more audio inputs on both of these boxes, providing me with external effects and compressors if I want on the incoming audio. I have arrangement perspective. I am missing a bit of the improv, but we talked about that a bit with the Euclidean sequencer and how you can program that to do it. You can do the same perspective that I showed you where we pre-program the notes. You can do it with a drum break on your Digitakt. So you could have all of these, all the slices pre-sliced on here and then use the Euclidean sequencer to play the drum slices. Just make sure you set the slice length to be like really long so that it, in case there's long gaps between your Euclidean triggers, it fills the gap so it doesn't go to silence. Absolutely possible. You can have improv drum breaks using the Euclidean sequencer and drum breaks, and I should probably do a video on it. And if anybody else does, you heard it here first. But you can do that. And you could do both. You could have improv drum breaks and improv melodies over here, but it still doesn't work in the same way that something like the Oxy 1 Mark II does. Is all of this landing? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? I'm like, spend every moment of my time watching YouTube. Like, it's just probably unhealthy what I do, but I watch a lot of YouTube. I do a lot of YouTube. It's all gear stuff, save for sometimes politics and video games. Both of those things I also watch too much of. and not watch too much video games, but watch too much politics. And I'm always studying gear. It's just what's being fed to me is hardware, electronic music. It's my passion. I love it. And I still haven't seen anything take me away from this. There was this piece of equipment that's really weird, this algorithmic thing. I forget what it's called. It's really large. Had like Commodore keys on it, little screen middle, poly something. Super weird looking. Looked very DIY. They sell them at Perfect Circuit. I would love to try one. I think it would take too long to learn. That would be frustrating for me. But I hope that this conversation is making sense for you and kind of helps you pick your instrument. So if you're going to perform live, you can see why I do this. I'm a multi-genre artist. Not like that's like some cool thing to be. I just mean that I can't settle on a particular. I like making all the kinds of music, and I would not like to have to write all of one specific type of music to go play a show. I like to just be able to play any music that I play. Like I'm just EZBOT at a show. And if it's EDM, it's EDM. If it's synthwave, it's synthwave. If it's techno, it's techno. It's like whatever. I want to be able to have those options. Some people are very particular that they're drum and bass artists or they're techno artists. That's not me. You know what I mean? So for me, I like to have the option to do all that, and this provides that for me, and that's why I like it. So if this helped you pick where to go or why you do what you do, then make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can watch more of this content. But I'd love to know if this conversation, rather me talking at you on YouTube, is useful. That being said, I think that kind of concludes a bit of where my head was going currently. So I'm going to jump over to the chat and check in with y'all, say what's up, and see what's going on. Mini patterns. I'm curious what Quasar is talking about with mini patterns. There's been quite a bit of chat, so I'm moving my way back up to the top. Let me say hello to everybody, because I know y'all here, and I want to acknowledge that there's human beings on the other end. This is why I like to stream, is because because y'all are people. You're real. You're not agents. You're not these like agentic machines. Hey, I'm hanging out with them. I get to hang out with real people, and I know you're on the other end doing real things, cooking, cleaning, working, taking care of your kids, and I appreciate that. About time. What's up? Sick. What's up, dude? Regretting this. Good to see you. James, my G. El Danny, how are ya? Oh, good. Stream Elements is here. Thank you. Learn how to customize the bot. Yeah, no thanks. Realist Wizard, what's up, dude? I love Realist Wizard. Hey, he's got the subscriber thing. Thank you for the subscription on YouTube, Realist Wizard. I appreciate that. Wizard, the plebs are bowing towards your highness. For real. He is the realist. Powell, what's going on? Tonesmith, what's up, dude? Good to see you again. Hat Ray, if you had to choose between one Electron device for music production set up like yours, this is an easy pick for me. It'd be the Digitakt II. Always. I mean, I can talk about that forever because I believe it so strongly. I know I said I use the Octatrack in every single setup. I do. I really do. So like maybe because I can't actually live out this hypothetical because I'm never going to let it happen to me, as long as, whatever. As long as I'm in control of what's happening in my life, I will never have to deal with that hypothetical. But if, hypothetically speaking, if I had to choose one, I would choose a Digitakt II. There's a reason for it. I do think the Digitakt II is the best groovebox Electron has ever made. Straight up. I think it is. I mean, I think they're all really good. Like, you could argue and be like, no, Rhythm Mark II is the best. Or you could say, no, the Digitone II is the best. Or no, the Toneworks the best with what it does. Or no, the Octatrack, obviously. It's got the crossfader and all that. Like, you could argue with me about that for days. They're all, like, so close in how good they are. You know what I mean? They're all so good. They're all right up there with each other. Just for me, it's so slim. This feature set is perfect for me. It just gets me in, like, it gets me right in the sweet spot really fast with making music in a place where I'm just like, oh man, I like what this sounds like. It's a sampler, the chameleon of electronic music, the chameleon of music in general, samplers. So to me, the Digitakt II, there are a lot of good arguments for why you would pick something else. But for me, it's just, I like the Digitakt II for an entire track. I mean, honestly, if it was a song, we're talking tracks, right? If we're talking songs, I would say an M8 tracker. Bought an Octatrack because of you. Oh, we could go. What's up? Righteous. Good call. Should have used an affiliate link. If you did, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you did. You're not going to be disappointed. I think you could be frustrated, but you won't be disappointed. Frustrated, for sure. That's just a part of the Octatrack life. Hello, what is this crazy stream title? Of course it exists. It is the holy grail. We all spend our time just researching and theory crafting the perfect setup, right? Yes. 100%. I did kind of, like, we talked about that a bit. I was slightly facetious, but it's an opinion. It's my opinion that my setup is the best. That's why I use it. But I was trying to make an argument for it. So if you had an argument against me, I'd love to hear it. I'm fine. I'm happy to debate with people about this stuff. I'd love to, honestly. It would be kind of cool to go on a debate. Like if it was like a hardware electronic music debate. Or to be like that guy that's like phone a friend and they're like, phone a friend and it's EZBOT. And I get on the phone and I'm like, here's why. I would be down to be that guy. Yo, what's up, Hi-Fi? I can't believe I made it. Welcome. Welcome. Spent the last 25 years doing this. Yeah, you have, haven't you? Your music's good, man. Machine Plus allows naming all your scenes. It's nice. You know, the Machine Plus sounds really good. It's a really solid device. And I've seen some sets where people use like 2 Machine Pluses. But also, like, you learn the Machine, you're learning a DAW. To me, the Machine and the MPC are like the same ethos. They're like a DAW box. It's kind of like Push 3, but also another DAW box. It's also probably why I don't play with it as much. Whereas like it doesn't corner you into like, here's what you're gonna make music this way. Do you like that? And you're like, okay, yeah, I do like that. I'm gonna make music. Whereas those boxes are just like, here's a DAW with buttons instead of a mouse and keyboard. Do you like that? And I'm like, I don't know if I like that. That'd be too much. I get scope creep a little too fast. Not that they're not dope. They're dope. I have my own trouble with that. Rhythm Droid, what's up, man? Had to sell my Mate Model 2 last week. I'm so sad. Well, I'm very sad for you. Sad you had to do that. I was like about to be like, I have 2 mates, but I understand. I can't get rid of my other mate. Actually, talking about why I have 2 mates, something I'm trying to do, I was talking with EOWave because I like their MIDI to CV converter. If you're into Eurorack, then you're an addict like me. Even when I try to quit it, pulls me back in, man. I mean, I go to AA for Eurorack. Maybe I could start that group. Probably get a lot of members. But if you're like me, you're constantly searching for the next like thing that's gonna like level up your experience or whatever. But I was thinking, I was like, I've been using my NerdSeek, and I'm gonna be doing more NerdSeek things on this channel. If you're interested in the NerdSeek, I'm gonna be talking about it more. Definitely some like really short form vertical content I'll be doing on that starting this week. But I'm using my NerdSeek, and I was like, I'm learning my NerdSeek again. I stepped away from it for like 2 years, a year and a half, and then I was jumping back over to it, and I'm like, it's a tracker. It's got that song perspective. It does have some stuff. I have an expander that adds Euclidean triggers onto it, which is cool. And it has generative stuff where it can keep you aligned to the scale, and you can kind of generate notes, but it does have some effects commands that'll generate notes for you, so you can do some generative stuff on there. It's really, really deep. It's much harder than my mate. And so I kind of thought to myself, what would it be like after I'm done doing what I'm doing with my NerdSeek, which is trying to build this set? After I'm done doing that, what would it be like to just use my M8 and just have my M8 be all MIDI? Because originally when the Dirty Wave M8 was developed, it was a MIDI sequencer. It was not a song tool for like audio coming out of the device. I feel like I went a long ways around just to say something like that. It was kind of obvious. Anyway, it was just a MIDI sequencer. That's what I mean to say. And I was like, what if I just use it that way? It's got really, really good MIDI implementation. It has MIDI learn, and you can save MIDI presets like you can do on Electron. Another thing where I love Electron is because you can save MIDI presets. I think that's so incredibly useful, just to save all the MIDI CCs, and the Electron stuff has MIDI learn. So you can MIDI learn, Digitakt II, Digitone II does. You can MIDI learn incoming values, plug in and out into your box, and you can make profiles of your instruments in your studio and just grab them off the shelf whenever you want. You can do that on the M8. And so I figured I could MIDI learn CC ideas, like where this goes to my envelope generator, this goes to this sequence, this weird esoteric sequencer, which is a good reason to get into Eurorack, and save it as instrument, and then just clear up more HP because it's just a MIDI to CV converter in my Eurorack system, and then use my mate's arranger perspective to program my Eurorack that I'm very, very fast with, very fast in the mate. Just a cool idea. That's why I was talking with EOWave. I was trying to get their MIDI to CV converter. Anyway, sorry you had to sell your mate. Long road for me to get there. I feel like I've arrived at my perfect setup. Once I get the TR-1000, that is. That may be true. You know what I have not seen? And I know that people are doing this, but I have not seen much of people playing solo TR-1000 shows. I haven't seen it, really. I've seen people have TR-1000s paired with modular a lot. That's really popular, but I haven't seen very much solo TR-1000 stuff. I think Bauka Top did a little bit of that on his channel. Really good channel, by the way. Check out Bauka's stuff. He's an amazing artist, especially for dub techno. Happens to be one of my favorites, so I really enjoy his videos. But you don't see much of that. It's interesting. Michael Monahan. That reminds me of that Elijah Wood Instagram reel where he's like, Matthew Mahana, no. He's like just making all those noises. It's a hilarious thing he did. I start my songs at the zero crossing every time. What do you mean? You start your songs at the zero crossing? And why are you saying that? What is the part of the conversation I'm missing that is missing the start my songs at the zero crossing? Love to hear more about that because I'm curious. There's always, it's up against $1 million industry. Designing products that make us salivate. Multi-million-dollar, maybe billion at this stage. Since everybody's a billionaire now. Somehow. Not me. Getting more broke every day. Yes, it is designed to do that. But it is more, I think there are some genuine developers in the music space that don't make you feel that way, where you don't feel like they're just like scrambling and they're at odds with themselves to like develop the next thing that's gonna like make you salivate and buy that and replace something that you already had with it that's so similar to it already. You know what I mean? There are some companies, and I do feel like Dirty Wave's one of them. I think that the developer for the Dirty Wave M8 tracker, Dirty Wave, that's the developer, Tim. One of those people who just like works on his thing and does what he does. I'd say that about Electron. I know some people would debate that with me because they sometimes feel like they have so many different devices that do so many similar things that somebody might argue and have a decent argument that that's not what they're doing. But I do think that I actually like the way they go about it. And I'm not just saying that. They don't pay me. Mind you, Electron does not pay me. And getting a free piece of equipment now and then is not pay the bills. So trust me, that doesn't count. But I do really like the perspective of having these like I like the limited feature set of instruments. So I do think that they do a similar thing to that. And I do think that Roland did that with the TR-1000. I think they took all their best stuff and they rolled it into the TR-1000, which is why I bought one. And I didn't get like some special deal from Roland. I bought one because I thought that looked super sick. And it does. I also want to try the polyend drum because they are merging the two perspectives, the electron perspective, or three perspectives, the electron perspective, the deluge perspective, or the grid-based programming perspective, and they're merging the well, I guess those are the two. What am I talking about? What's the third one? I don't know if it does arrangement. So no, they're merging two perspectives. Will you be doing a jam today? You're like, shut up, man. Will you just play some music? I was going to, but we ended up having conversation for so long. I don't know if there's time now. I limit myself to 2 hours. We do have about another 50 minutes, so maybe we could jam a little bit. We did do a little sound demo. It wasn't as much of a sound demo, but I was showing off how you could do Euclidean stuff. Maybe we could actually do the Euclidean drum break thing. That could be a cool little demo for us to play with, and maybe it would turn into music. Which one would you buy first? EZBOT has really thought this out. The standard bare minimum setup since the 90s has been one synth, one sampler, one drum machine. It's a timeless template. Thank you, Rhythm Droid. I agree. I mean, I have definitely thought this out because I think about it a lot. And that is true. I think these are like my general rules of thumb about equipment purchases and like what you should have. Not necessarily equipment purchases, instruments to have in your studio if you want to make dope music. I think it really helps to have an analog polysynth. I think that there's something really beautiful and wonderful and nostalgic about it, and it will incentivize you to make music. So I think having an analog poly is really great. If it just means you have an analog filter and a digital oscillator, sure. I think that covers it. It's close enough. I'd say really getting analog poly like a Prophet 6 or something like that is really a sick thing to do. But I think having an analog poly is really nice. I think having a drum machine is really fun, unnecessary if you have a sampler drum machine, but I think it's really cool. But I would say having an analog poly, having a good sampler, and then having a good mono synth. Doesn't have to be analog, just a good mono synth where the developer put all their energy into giving you hands-on control of developing leads and bass lines. There's a whole bunch of pieces of equipment that go into that. I think like Bass Station's a really good one. Grandmother's a really good one. There's a ton of them. There's, I'm not going to name off every one that I can think of. But I do think those are really good. Live repatching MIDI cables is another level. That is what I do. And it is whack. Honestly, it's not cool. It's necessary because there's not another option for me that is easy. It's actually easier to live repatch the MIDI cables. Dirty Wave Mate, let's go. Yes, I agree. Would this setup make sense with improvised techno in house? Yes. That's how I do it. So I'm probably so far back because I'm going so slow with the chat here, but let's get some music, some techno. Excuse me. What's happening here? Okay, so I like to write techno. I like techno. I like to listen to techno now and then. I like to write and play techno a lot more than I like to listen to it. I'm not gonna be fooling you about that. I prefer to play and write it more than I like to listen to it. It's just the truth. I listen to mostly rock and roll, and when I listen to electronic music, it's like Daft Punk and dub techno. But those styles of music. Justice, Daft Punk, Seriusmo. Well, a lot of stuff that has lots of chords and melody and stuff. When it comes to like doing like live improv techno on these boxes without an external sequencer, the reason why people use something like the Oxy 1 Mark II and stuff like that is because when they're doing that, they can improv on that box, and they're actually just treating this, they're completely mitigating or removing, so to speak, this part of the box. They're just using the multi-timbral synthesizer. Multi-timbral means that it can, basically each track receives its own MIDI channel, and some of them have polyphony like the Digitone, and you can, just treat it like a sound module. And so that's really useful because this has all the hands-on control and lots of sounds. So they use the external Oxy one because it has a good generative tool set. And this doesn't have a good generative tool set. So what you do, in my opinion, if you want to do improv techno on these boxes, one, do the trick that I showed you with the Euclidean sequencer, which we did a moment ago. And 2, you do what I do. And what I do is I write an A-B style sequence. So for instance, when I want to kind of improv this, I can be in my mute mode and I can cue up this, and I can cue up this, and then I can use like an effect or something. And drop into this, and I kind of like can improvise this if I want. Take my kick out, switch to this kick, switch to this set of hats, switch to this bass line and pair it with that bass line from the A section with the B section. And so I can kind of improv here. And this is kind of how I improv when I'm playing techno. Here we go, a little drop into another one. This is how I do my improv techno. And then of course you improv by performing it, right? We get the A-B section, you can mix and match elements, but you can also perform it out. Like I can go in and start bringing volumes up, bringing volumes down, opening decay envelopes, which is a big part of bringing energy into your sound. Filters, envelope generators, modulating LFOs, changing the sound design on your FM synth, which is really powerful over here. That's how I improv. So the answer is yes, because I do it. However, it's not the same as what people are doing on a Roland box as much. I think there's something about that interface with the faders where people like to program and just kind of like throw faders and program. You don't do that as much on Electron. You can. Like we could potentially like, let's see. Do I have an open spot here? Yeah. We can like copy this pattern, go over here, paste it. So like you could, and then delete this, and I'll delete the patterns, right? What I wanted was the bed. I wanted all the sound sources. So I could just kind of like be like, and go in here or go into my step sequencer and just like throw down a sequence like this. And then go over here and start programming some kicks. Maybe this isn't set at 8 bars, it's set at a bar. And I go like, go to my hat section and go. Go over here and start programming this one. The only problem with this is like you do want to like be in a scale, I guess. So like maybe not in chromatic because it's a little harder. Use Dorian, it's fine. I don't like that. That sounds a little goofy. Let me just remove that one. There we go. You'd have to practice. Obviously, it's not something I do as much. Like, I'm not programming notes live at my shows. But you could do this. You can. I guess there's another way you could do it. You could actually save chords as the note. Oh my god, I just came up with an idea. Check this out. Like, say we go into our chord mode, go into your chord sequencer, and you can go function and then save a note, like save a chord to your memory. And if we're in our keyboard and we do it, okay, come back here and we go save a chord to your chord memory, function yes, and I just go, I want just that note. And I go, yes, 1, yes, okay. And then we can go and do it again. And I just want, this would work. And I go, yes. And now that's there. And then after I get a couple of notes that are just the only notes I want to program, obviously you could just remember them, but this would work for people who don't want to have to think at all. And we could go like this and go, and yes, yes. And then we set this to chord mode. And that could be just the notes. Anyway, it's an idea. I picked the wrong 3 notes because it's not very techno what I did. And I'm trying to do techno, so let's get out of here. But you could improv this way. Like we're kind of improvising. I guess we are improvising, not kind of, but. I don't know, we're kind of just doing it on the fly, right? There just to kind of prove a point. So yes, it can be done. Digitakt, if new electron digitone, if you really love synthesis. That's a good point. We're talking about which box to get. Sometimes stresses me while performing live because once one piece is live, it's occupied and cannot use it. I think I'm missing out on exactly what you're talking about there. Yeah, I'm a songwriter, not a beat guy. Cress head. You are not alone. Here's the thing. I've actually been having this conversation over and over again lately. God, this year has just been the year of the same conversation. And I really think that a lot of people are coming from the same perspective as me. Like I hear it all the time when I do like private sessions with people booking me to learn electron boxes or learn the M8 or whatever. And they tell me like, you know, I know music. I've been playing music all my life. I'm a guitar player. I'm a drummer. I'm a bass player. I'm a pianist or whatever, right? And they just want to learn these pieces of equipment because they want to bring the tip of the spear into their new music workflow. I think hardware electronic music is the forefront of music technology besides playing with your software. This is it. This is the coolest stuff. This is the coolest stuff that's happening right now in the music sphere, in my opinion, but I think it's true, is hardware electronic music. This is it. This is what's happening right now, whether it's Eurorack, whether it's Electron or M8s or Push 3s or whatever it is, or Poly and stuff. This is the forefront of music technology, and it's happening right now. And if you're doing this stuff, you're in it. And I think a lot of people who are like doing, come from like rock bands or whatever, they're now like, maybe they're in their 30s and 40s, 50s, 60s, and they're thinking to themselves, they don't have their bandmates anymore. They're still absolutely in love with their music or whatever. They come from this perspective. They pick up an electron box or something, and they hired me, and I try and help them learn it. Even if they don't, regardless, they pick up another one of these boxes, and what happens transforms their music. There's something that happens when you pick up these boxes. I was having this conversation with this singer of this punk band who picked up a Digitakt, and he noticed. I told him beforehand that this would happen, so he just kind of like noticed and then said, like, you were right about this. That when you start to learn these instruments, because they're so new, the idea is not like cemented into music the same way that playing acoustic instruments has been. We're talking I don't know how long, thousands of years. People have been playing with drums and guitars and whatever instruments where they had to play them live. They weren't programming them. It's been a very short time that we've been programming beats. This is pretty new tech compared to the other stuff, super old. So this still, to me, like even in that perspective, this stuff is extremely fresh. It's very new to our brains, and like I don't think we're caught up to it yet. And I think it changes the kind of music you write. And like I was saying, when you're like your perspective, like this goes back to the beginning of our conversation, your perspective on like, say you see the entire arrangement kind of like says, okay, well, I understand that I have an entire arrangement to program music on. Whereas where if you're looking inside of a single track and you can only see inside of that track and you can't really see what's happening in the track, you have to examine each moment to see what's happening. It's going to slow you down. You're going to pay more attention to these incremental moments. And that's not going to make you write the same kind of music because you had to think in a different way and slow down. And that's what I think is happening with electronic music. And people pick up these pieces of equipment and it changes them, changes what they write. And if you become infatuated with these machines, you end up writing new kinds of music. You don't write the same rock music anymore. And if you do, you're like this alien to me. I don't understand how you've kept your perspective, but I think most people kind of get sucked into what it provides you with. You don't write piano music on an electric guitar. It doesn't work. It's the same with electronic gear. You don't write piano music on a Digitakt. You maybe record your piano, but you don't write your piano music on a Digitakt. Does that make sense? Is that true? Am I lying? I do think that's true. It's a good day for an EZBOT stream. What's up, Femto? How's it going, Jordo? My dude. Yeah, you have the sidekick? Cool. The Teenage Engineering one? I'd like to try it. I'm probably not going to buy one. I already have the Octatrack. I don't know if I want more stuff like that. Create a loop on OT, route it live, and then work on the second one, and so on. Exactly. You got it, Rob Schneider. What do you think about the new Ableton extension feature? I think it's rad, and I am not a coder, so I don't know how to leverage it, sadly. But I think it's really cool, and I hope that other people make workflows that make me more interested in Ableton than I am. I think Ableton's great, but I prefer Bitwig, but maybe this SDK outfit will give us workflows that bring people like me into Ableton further than I am. So I think it's really cool. I think Ableton they're doing smarter things than Bitwig. I hate to say it. I love Bitwig. I prefer Bitwig. I'm a Bitwig instructor, and because that's how deep into Bitwig I went. I love Bitwig. I still prefer it. I do think that Ableton is being smarter than Bitwig. I think they're doing the hardware thing. Like I was saying before, I think hardware electronic music is the forefront of music technology. Ableton recognizes that, and they're leaning into it pretty hard, right? They got your phone working with it. They got Eurorack working with it. They've got the smaller Ableton Move, and they have the Push 3. All of these things, like they got it figured out. Bitwig's slow catching up. They just got an audio interface with some CV. John Carter, new Patreon member here. I downloaded 2FF Performance Mixer template. Works great, but I've adapted it to what works for me. Will I be punished for my audacity? John Carter, you will not. You will be applauded for your engineering. Please, I wish I heard that from more people. I think that's amazing. My sounds are for me. I share them with you, but it's supposed to be editable for you so that you can do whatever you want. Octatrack is really easy to edit scenes. It takes 2 seconds. And if you just take some time to get familiar with the device, you pick up one of my templates. It's got all these kind of bread and butter spots, and you can manipulate them for you to make your own effects. That's where it's at. So no, you're awesome, John. Good call, man. Mini patterns. Quasar, I don't know what you're talking about, but I like that. Is that the name of a plugin or something? Detroit Berlin says hi. D0, what's up, dude? Been digging your tunes? You've been sharing in the Discord, man. Good job. Alan, hey, Master. Hey, chat. Master. Please don't. Please. In my humble opinion, M8 is the best one here. Reason beat. It's good to have opinions. I mean, I won't argue with that. I think you can't argue with opinions anyway, but I think you could probably make a really solid argument for why that's your favorite. You actually prefer sequencing with the Electron sequencers and use your Torso T1 for other devices. I don't have a Torso T1 sequencing my DT. Okay. Cool. No, it's great. I think that's a great workflow. I'm glad you do that because I honestly, it's almost like sacrilege, like skipping the Electron sequencer because it's like the main part of Electron is the sequencer. Everything else is just kind of additional. Do you write your melody on the Electron over MIDI keys? Great question, Ferris. That's actually the sound my kid makes when he wants to emulate a dog barking for whatever reason. Yes, I do. No, I don't. I do and I don't. It depends on how much energy I have. But I do think that leveraging a MIDI controller with a Digitone and using your auto channel, because what's really dope when you do that, especially on the Digitone, is you can hold down a step, use the MIDI piano, and it will program the notes. You just hold the step and hit the notes. And if you're using the auto channel, it doesn't matter what track you're on. That's so sick and so easy to do. And then you can use all sorts of chord generators too. If you're not like super good at making chords, like you can use chord generators and just hold the step and hit the chord. And like scalar, for instance, you could use scalar and just send chords over and start like copy and paste the chords, move the chords around, edit the chords, and have a good time. So I think that's really cool, leveraging the auto channel. But yes and no is the answer. Depends on the day. Something to not forget: MIDI capture on Push 3. Yeah, you're not wrong about that. It's one of the coolest thing the Push 3 has, and the Ableton Move is the MIDI capture. God, it's such a cool idea. Just jamming and then it just grabs it. Timberdoodle, good to see you. Hey, best channel for getting me into Electron. Appreciate that. Spectralis is a magic machine. Not familiar with it. Wow, just jammed with my Digitakt and switched YouTube. Here we go. What's up, dude? Welcome. Hey, pals. As we say in north of England. Cool. What's up, North England? Currently making a custom MIDI controller for Effectrix so I can play a bit like you do. The Octa. I don't know what Effectrix is, but must be an effects processor for your computer. Always love gear talk. Me too. I think that's what's that's what I really like about my channel, is that it's not just like jamming all the time. Like we have these conversations about gear, and I hope that my perspective is helpful. I think hearing anybody's perspective is helpful, because if you disagree with it, at least it's acknowledging what you do not like. Or it's just, getting your brain cooking a little bit. Digitone 2 is massively capable as a single box. 100%. Digitone 2 is the ultimate synth right now. I think that it is the best synth for the money, Digitone 2, because of the Electron sequencer. And we can have subgroups in Euro Crackers Anonymous. That's right. Euro Crackers. Went from hardware to DAW 20 years later, since 5 years back to hardware. Feel that. I think they do similar things, so you can only have to buy one, and it does Groovebox thing no matter what you buy. Yeah, I agree with that. 100%. If I had the money, I'd prefer buying an Erica Sense Hex Drums. Is that thing cool? Does everybody think that's cool? The Hex Drum? Send me one. Hex Inverter. Love to play with one, but I don't know. Is it cool? There's no synth shop anymore in Seattle, so there would, if there was one, I'd be working there, and there would be a Hex Drum for sure. What do you think is next for Electron, Easy? Well, I think the stuff they shared at Super Booth, obviously, which I think is going to change everybody's perspective on Electron pretty fast. I think having external outs for Digitakt and Digitone and Syntakt are going to kind of blow people's brains open, and like the ability to send your stuff into modular and into other effects boxes on a per track basis is going to kind of change the game quite a bit. What's next for Electron? I honestly don't know. I mean, what else is there to do? I think really all they can do is like, they could go into Eurorack, but I don't think they will. I told them they should when I spoke with them last, and which was a while ago. I told them they should, and I don't know why they haven't, but I would love to just like take the Digi sequencer and put it in a Eurorack module and just give us a freaking, just do it. My goodness. Otherwise I don't know. I think it's just gonna be new versions of the same stuff they already have, and which I want. So I think that's great. But I think that's it. I don't know what else there is left. I think we're there until somebody thinks of a new idea that no one's thought of. I think we're just kind of stuck where we are. Do you think a mixer is necessary for full Electron DTDN analog heat setup, or just use the internal mixer? What do you mean? What's your name? Cockbite? I don't know what you mean exactly. Do you think a mixer is necessary for a full Electron DTDN analog heat? What else? Where else are the signals going to go? I mean, they have to go into a mixer at some point. I'm not sure exactly what you mean because they don't do individual outs, so I don't know. You can elaborate on that one, maybe. I struggle with finding the fun in drumming. Drum sampling versus immediacy of an analog drum machine. Okay. Hex drums is so much fun in that regard. I don't know. I want to try. Outbox 8 will finally be able to pre-listen in a live set. You can already pre-listen in a live set with an Octatrack. Homie, that's what the Octatrack does. It's got Q. It's got it all. They already did it. It's been around for 12 years. But yeah, you'll be able to also do that. I don't know if it does duplicate outs. I'm not sure if it does that. Maybe if you route, maybe it doesn't route to the main outs anymore. I don't know. I imagine that would be how it would be set up. But maybe you can have both. Do we already know if we only can connect one digibox to the outbox? I'm pretty sure that is the case. I honestly don't know very much about the outbox. I only knew that something like that was happening, but I didn't know much about it. But anyway, I know as much as you do at this point. So, but as far as I know, that is not the case. It's a one box per outbox, I think. But I don't know. We're gonna have to wait and find out. I really don't know enough about it. I don't have one, and I'm not testing it, so. Send me one, Electron. I'm trying to cut down on the thinking. Yes, I think I know what you're referring to. You're talking about the sequencer stuff. Are people excited about the outbox? Yes, they are. GG, what's up, dude? Late to the stream, always catching them once wrapping up, though. Cool. Thanks, GG. I'm glad you do that. I think for a lot of people, it's a missing link, and therefore look forward to the outbox. Yeah, for me it is, because it's going to pair. So that in particular, the title of the stream and the YouTube thumb would be even more appropriate had there be an outbox in the picture and on my table. Because when that happens, my modular world will finally merge with my Electron world. Right now it doesn't. I think the best stuff in modular to me is the effects and the sequencers. But I think the effects, just because the effects are right up there with how good the sequencers are, I think that when the outbox comes and I have it on the table with my Electron stuff, that I should have had it on this perspective so we can see the chat. It would it'll let me process some particular sounds through Sam Karanda by Chaos Devices, like for looping delays, or Cosmic Debris by WMD. Process my chord progression through that for my Digitone. Whoa, that is we don't have those kinds of effects in Electron. And we do on, I guess we have some similar effects on ToneVerk, but still not the same. Those effects are dedicated effects. We are still limited. ToneVerk's got lots of cool effects, and you can chain them and make kind of your own effects, but it's not the same. It really isn't. It's like they have a DSP guy just making the coolest effect in modular. On the ToneVerk, you don't have that like you do in modular. So we don't have the brains of make noise in Electron. You're not gonna get a morphogene. You know what I mean? So I think there's something really cool about that, and I think it's gonna open up my workflow big time. I mean, maybe I'd only need my Digitakt and an outbox and so a little modular skiff and an Octatrack. Maybe I wouldn't even use my Digitone as much, because maybe I'd just be processing chords. But maybe, honestly, I think I'll just end up adding a little IntelliGel, tiny little skiff with outbox and Maybe having a little mixer on it, a little send mixer where I can send stuff into some effects. I think that'll be sick. For some reason, it bothers me that Octatrack is reduced to an effects box. I don't know. It's just so big and powerful. See, that perspective is very common, but also not so good, because a lot of things don't need you to use everything at once. Like if I needed to use everything that was offered to me in my DAW, then I would have to use every type of instrument that's available. And you know what I mean? Like I'd have to use the FM machine, and I'd have to use the polysynth, and I'd have to use the analog, and I'd have to use wavetable, and I don't want to do that. And what about all your VSTs? So I think like that whole idea of like it's being reduced to this, that's not how that's not what's happening. The Octatrack has live loopers, like it has pickup machines. You do not use pickup machines with external MIDI clocks. So if Electron, because it doesn't work, the pickup machines do not work with external MIDI clocks. So if Electron intended you to use everything that it offered at one time, they wouldn't even offer that. So I think that is that's my argument for why. To try not to let that happen to you. That's the opposite of scope creep. That's like not scope, that's like, I don't know. I feel like that kills our workflow. But I understand it because I have that feeling too. I get that feeling in my chest where I'm like, I'm not utilizing it all, but I don't think it's a good workflow. Do you think I can make techno track on Digitone? Yes. Yes. Doug, what's up? What's up, my G? I'd love to see a pure Electron mixer. Me too. I don't think you're gonna see it though. Was a pleasure. Have a wonderful time. Rock and roll, Rob. Hey yo, Shohako. What's up? And thank you for subscribing, Dark Sister. And also somebody else. Muddy Nikes. Nice name. Vibing on that. Individual voices can sound a bit thin on their own, so beef up your main tracks with unused voices via unison. With the Digitone, yeah. But it also kind of makes a bit of a chorusing sound when you do that. I'm always changing my setup, maybe too much sometimes, but I have Digitakt II and tempted to make room for Digitakt I or Digitone II. Sorry, I was reading that weird. Indie film composer. Is that what you do? I sent Toneverk back though. That happens. Problem Child Official. Must be a band. Who isn't? Wait, what, Harry? You're referring to 110. Okay. I feel like I'm all caught up in the chat now. Would be amazing to have Outbox Rack Versio. Yeah. Maybe Femto, who's in the chat here, or was at least, will take advantage of stuff like that. He's been working on some audio drivers for Electron with Push, which work, by the way. I'm sure he'll release eventually here. But eventually you're going to be able to plug your Digitakt into a Push 3 and multi-track all of that to a Push. That's pretty cool. Then you can use a MIDI controller as your mixer at that point, and you won't have to use your computer if you're really diehard dawless nerd like I am. The new Exelon mixer will be a great to pair with Outbox. It will. And they're sending me one of those mixers. That's what I've been told. Yet to see it. But I have tried it, and it is really cool. And it's very lightweight, which is weird how lightweight it is. But I think you're right. I think if I have an Outbox and that, and a little module, my setups can get really big. That's a problem for me. I don't want to have too many pieces of equipment. I like this setup, like we're saying, this is all you needed. This is all I've needed so far. I haven't ever needed more. I think a reverb and a delay and chorus kind of like the only effects I truly need on synths and drums. And so I've never really needed to go further than that. I think there's like a good, I mean, we could even make it into a meme topic, really. It's just like if you had to pick some effects on your pedal board, if you're a guitar player, like what would you put on your pedal board? Like you're going to put a reverb, a delay, and chorus on your pedal board. That's why it's what's offered in Electron. You might also put like a compressor and a tremolo or something if you're a guitar player. But for the most part, like those are that's what's going to be there. And tremolo is probably already in your, you know, Princeton reverb or whatever anyway. But yeah. What about polka? What? Donald Duck, what's up, G? The new XLM mixer will be great. When are those coming out? I don't know. Soon. What's up, Levi? Good to see you. Phaser. Good point. But a phaser is a chorus, essentially. Or it's the same guts as a chorus. The Levi Cole. Cool, man. Well, it's been an hour 45 of me just talking straight at you. And I'm like, I appreciate everybody hanging out and the conversations that we've been having about gear. And like, you know, I love this stuff. You know, this is what we're all about here. Live hardware electronic music is what we do on this channel. It's what we talk about. It is, I think, your passion like it is my passion. So if you're watching this, it's probably the case. If you want to support this channel further, subscribe, please. Leave comments, preferably not rude ones. And that's really helpful. It boosts the channel and which grows the reach and all that. You know how it works. So do it. It's really helpful to me. But you can visit patreon.com/EZBOT and sign up for the Patreon. Comes with a lot of rewards. I just released a reward yesterday. Let me show it to you. I don't have a sound demo of it, but I'll show it to you. So firstly, let me jump over here really quick. This stream, not sponsored by anyone, and but I do have my own shop, so I sponsor it by myself. So check this out. This is my shop. This is my shop. It's called Modbang. I do live hardware electronic music shows. I designed all of these cables. I sell them. You can buy them. These are MIDI cables that light up when you plug them in. They let you know that you're connected. They use passive electricity. They're gorgeous. I have clear ones. I have ones that are not clear. Red, blue, purple, orange, green, blue, white. All sorts of beautiful colors. Super cool stuff. Glow-in-the-dark MIDI cables, glow-in-the-dark patch cables, 3.5 to TRS. Pseudo's random pitch calculator. This is a quantizer for Eurorack. Magnetic overlays, synth stands, mostly sold out, some merch, and patch cables. All sorts of cool stuff that you can buy from my shop. There's also some tools like waveform generators, wavetable generators, single cycle waveform generators, useful stuff for electron boxes in the resources tab as well. Bank duplicators for your Octatrack. All sorts of cool stuff. Worth checking out. But I also added a reward. Well, I don't want to... It's hard for me to show stuff off on here because it will show creator perspective, which has a lot of details I'm not going to share with people on YouTube because it's very private. But let's see if we do how do we do it? Incognito. Patreon.com/EZBOT. Here we go. So if you were to join the Patreon rewards guard is locked. I should probably unlock that. Anyway, 52 FM multi-sampled instruments for the Tonewerk is one of the rewards. It's not letting you see that. Hold on. Damn it. It's not gonna do it for us. Forget it. Anyway, I multi-sampled a ton. One of the rewards on my Patreon right now, if you join the Patreon that I dropped late last night, is 52 multi-sampled instruments for the Tonewerk. They're all from the Korg FM2. Somebody on there asked me, why the Korg FM2? It's a Volca. The answer is, FM synthesis is incredibly simple. FM synthesis is a lightweight CPU. It does not require much. You can do it with a calculator, I bet. It's a great sounding synthesis. It uses, sine waves for the most part, modulating other sine waves. That doesn't take much CPU to get done. The Korg FM2 is the closest thing that you can get in a small box that sounds like a DX7. Truly sounds like FM synthesis. The Digitone uses FM at its core. I would not say it's very FM sounding at all, honestly. It doesn't sound very FM. It sounds like its own thing. Digitone is its own thing, but it uses the technique of FM synthesis to generate its sounds. The Digitone, or the Korg FM2, actually sounds like your typical FM synth. So when you hear it, you're just like, that is FM. You're just like, that is so FM. It sounds like glass. It sounds like metal. It sounds like just like somebody taking a diamond and cutting into your windshield. That is the Korg FM2. That is a DX7. That is a DX100. That is whatever. All those old FM synths, they sound very, very iconic, and they sound like FM. I multi-sampled a ton of instruments. It's 3.6 gigabytes of samples that you can load. They're L-multi format, so you can use other instruments. You can load them in your DAW. You could probably use them on a push 3. I don't really know what format it does, but maybe you could. But anyway, that's one of the rewards I post on Patreon. There's all these Octatrack templates. There's those rewards, all sorts of stuff. If you want to get your hands on that, patreon.com/EZBOT. Supports this channel directly, also comes with cool stuff. So check it out. I recommend it. And also there's an exclusive discount to modbang.com. So if you want to get those MIDI cables, all sorts of cool stuff that I design in the hardware realm, and I do design cool hardware accessories. And I put a lot of money into it and time and energy, and it sucks my soul out. Patreon.com also has an exclusive discount code for buying that stuff to get it even cheaper. You can also get it from Perfect Circuit. Put that out there. It supports me a lot more to buy it from my website, but you can get it from Perfect Circuit if that's your preferred method. That's going to be it for me. We talked about music here for almost 2 hours, workflow, setup, why I choose this gear. Really, we're talking about arrangement perspective versus XOX style sequencers and having external effects processors and external loopers for transitions. And that was kind of the crux of it all. Mind you, we went a lot deeper into some other topics. Euclidean over on the Digitone, Euclidean sequencing on the Digitakt for drum breaks and stuff. All that stuff is possible. You can do this more probabilistic style sequencing on here. Just it's a little bit simpler than maybe you'd like, and that's why you end up pairing it with something like an Oxy 1 Mark II. That is the crux of the topic. That's what we covered today. So if you're coming in late, go back to the beginning. We talked about it for a long time. And that's going to be it. So thank you everybody for hanging out. No music production today, we're just chatting. We've already done it for too long, so I'm going to go. I've had enough coffee to make it through this. My coffee's now wearing off. I'm getting a little tired. I'm going to go re-up on coffee, and I'll see you at our Eurorack AA meeting. Right? No? I hope not. We tried to improv this to just prove a point. Y'all the best. I love you deeply. Thank you so much for the support on this channel, and keep coming back. It works if you work it. And you're worth it.